Thanks for the introduction. Kate, you said this was going to be a workshop, and I think it's interesting because this project for my agency has been nothing but a workshop, because we work a lot with big organizations, big brands, presidential campaigns, et cetera, and try to layer in an authentic social engagement around certain structures, be it corporate brand philosophy, be it sort of the parameters of the Red Cross. In this, I'll steal Bobby's phrase when I called him on sort of day 2, and he said, well, you got to catch the tiger by the tail. It created this organizing moment that no one really was prepared for, least of which Dan Savage. And so how do you back into something that is incredibly authentic, but when it's such a sensitive topic, when it's such a sensitive subject matter, how do you walk that line? I think we're still learning, and because this is a workshop, the evolution of this project as we go towards a book that comes out, it was just some extracts of it was released yesterday on Perez Hilton. It will go into bookstores in a couple of weeks and then transition the capacity that's been built in. So I'm going to start by, I guess, what they call a sizzle reel of some of the best submissions of content. Some people you'll recognize, many you won't.
14 and 15 and 16-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds out there watching this video, what I'd love you to take away from it really is that it gets better. However bad it is now, it gets better. And it can get great, and it can get awesome. Your life can be amazing, but you have to tough this period of it out, and you have to live your life so that you're around for it to get amazing, and it can and it will.
I know that life can seem unbearable. I know that the people in your household or in your school may not understand you, and that they may even physically harm you. But I want you to know that it gets better.
High school is such a short time. It's so short. That 4 years goes by like that. And you're gonna be so happy when you're done and you get out into the real world and you see that not everyone is an asshole to you.
I felt like I had this deep, dark secret that nobody shared, and it had to stay a deep, dark secret. And I wish that I had known that if I hang in there, things would get better. And today I can say that things do definitely get better.
And right now, I know for many of you young folks, each day can be a struggle. I know for LGBT youth, it can be especially hard. And on some days, it seems almost unbearable. But when you feel that way, think about what I'm saying to you. You have nothing to be ashamed of. You have every reason to be proud. Proud. Don't let them take your self-worth away.
The world is much bigger than any person who tells you that being gay is bad or a choice. Those people are wrong.
I learned that the world is much bigger than one person's opinion of who I am.
For me, it didn't get better until I took a lot of negative aspects out of my life. If there were people who didn't take true for true, people who didn't take me as I am, instead of having them in my life, I decided that I was gonna move them out and bring more positive people in.
There are lots of people out here who care about you and want to see you live.
So please stay strong and stay in it. It gets better.
Tell yourself over and over again that you're okay, because you are.
I'm a gay man. There are literally dozens of other gay men, lesbians and bisexuals here with me in Parliament. And that's part of the change that we've seen in our society, a change from the time when it wasn't acceptable to be out and openly gay and in Parliament, to a time when actually nobody really cares.
I have a message for all the young people out there who are being bullied or who feel alone and find it hard to imagine a better future. First of all, hang in there and ask for help. Your life is so important to your family, your friends, and to your country.
If you ever feel like because of bullying, because of what people are saying, that you're getting down on yourself, you've got to make sure to reach out to people you trust. Whether it's your parents, teachers, folks that you know care about you just the way you are, you've got to reach out to them. Don't feel like you're in this by yourself.
I know I'm not the usual kind of person to make these videos because I am still just 15, but I just had to say it because I really do believe it. It gets better. I mean, you look around today and you look at all the It Gets Better videos alone and you see all the acceptance there is out there, and it's an insane amount. And I know that one day I'm going to graduate and I'm going to step out into the real world and I won't be forced to be around the kind of people who have a negative view on being gay anymore. And it's just going to be fantastic.
So here's a brief ecosystem. Dan and Terry spontaneously did the video sort of in the end of September. There's a rash of high-profile suicides, including the one at Rutgers University. They put up on YouTube. Dan announced it on his blog and in his Savage Love columns. 2 days later, it got a big spike. And I called the gentleman on the right of the screen, who is my college boyfriend, who's also Dan's producer, and said, let's do something with this. My agency, you see our storefront there, sort of, we like to think we specialize in some of this. So we quickly mobilized to say, you can't just do it on the social channels, because there's actually the opportunity to bring new blood into the movement. And if we can establish a relationship, even at the most surface level, let's build on the capacity. So some of the highlights you see there from the very beginning, Dan's post, I believe it was September 29th. In that short period of time, we quickly mobilized. We got, in 24 hours, the first version of the site went up. We did the logo, et cetera, launched some technology. We then saw a slow build up from some of the people you saw up to the 12th of October when President Obama did his, we got 1 day notice of it. So we have this spike. Suddenly we have big support, there's media everywhere. What do we do with it? This is where the sort of workshop begins. Dan's instinct is to just let it fly. He didn't even want to launch the initial site. He said, keep it all on social, keep it going. Don't launch an organization, let's not have it be all about me. But we kept seeing, then the corporate entities came in, there's a platform play to be had here. So some quick numbers, there was 1.4 million unique visits to the site, well over 15 million YouTube views to the broader effort. This sort of echo chamber has been the goal of sustaining that, taking that spike, that tiger by the tail, and keeping people within a movement, keeping people going, understanding the value of what we're doing, and promoting each other's video. To paraphrase and use some of the same language that we use with Jeremy, lowering the barriers to entry, making it incredibly simple to do something. So you see on the bottom of this circle, just sign up, take the pledge. Really only 13,000 people, I shouldn't say only, but 13,000 people contributed their videos. That's how many we know. There may be some out there on YouTube that didn't get tagged appropriately, but roughly 13,000 to 15,000 videos were created. We then used those people in press. We kept the sort of feedback to the community going, so that though there wasn't a clear end goal other than creating the moment, removing Dan from the equation and keeping a highly diverse, at times even wildly international set going around this common message, at the same time growing here on the left that core constituency. So 75,000 emails, 160, I think it's closer to 200,000 fans. We've sold over 3,000 t-shirts for the Christmas time. The goal here was, though, to create new capacity. We're starting to survey this crowd, realizing that roughly half are straight allies. More than a third of people of the gay contingency have not been involved in gay politics in the past, are not on the mailing lists of organizations in this room, have not been participating in the movement. So we see the challenge now, going towards the book and then releasing going further, of onboarding new people, new blood, new enthusiasm into organizations in this room and elsewhere. So the next thing that we're working on doing, we're going to move a lot of this into GLSEN. Now, details are still being worked out exactly around the book release and everything, but we're giving technology to GLSEN and their chapters. The goal is, one of the biggest points of stickiness, I will say, along that timeline was when we started promoting real events. When we asked people to put together the event in Lexington, Kentucky that 300 people showed up to. When we had 3 different events in Washington, the biggest of which was 500 people. When we voiced back the offline realities, making this not just about digital channels and Twitter and Facebook and Dan Savage, but asking people to invite their council people and their mayors and really putting together the infrastructure on the ground. Now the challenge for all of us in this room, donors and organizations alike, is to keep that going, trusting the individual to act on your behalf, your organizations, but then giving them clear goals. So while the project, we are combating bullying, we are raising the level of attention, Now the time is to channel this energy into respective organizations. So the mix of surveying and then equipping other organizations to onboard this, sometimes offering Dan in that package, will be the next period of mobilization. I think the audience will continue to grow within those organizations, but the goal all along has not been creating a new bureaucracy, a new organization, a new brand, but instead taking the acquisition opportunity around a moment in time, a organizing opportunity, an organizing moment, and now transitioning it. So we're going to continue to survey as we make this transition, report back hopefully a year from now. Many organizations here will be reporting about the tens of thousands of people that they've onboarded from this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and sustain donors, advocacy, and volunteer relationships. So with that, we're going to go to Glad.
So Thomas and I are, I guess, both been asked to comment on It Gets Better. I am not here to be the skunk at the garden party. However, there are some important things for us to talk about with this. It was, and I guess I would like to start by asking how many of you did videos for It Gets Better? A lot of hands are going up. My hand's up too. There was a very small section of It Gets Better for Spanish language videos. There were a lot of people in Latin America that were actually following as well, and our Spanish language media program put out a couple of videos, one of mine, one of our directors in Spanish language media. Very exciting. And yet, It Gets Better was about reaching young people. It was our messages for them. And we really don't have any metrics for knowing how many young people we reached. And more importantly, it was about reaching them with a message designed to tell them that there was a reason to hope, that life would get better, that if it's bad now, you can hope and know because of all of our wisdom, our messages, to give you strength to go on. And we have no idea whether it actually had that impact. At the same time, as the coverage in the news last fall began to focus on this rash of suicides, at the same time as It Gets Better was launched, there were a lot of folks who began to be concerned. Now, Andy Lane is here, and the Johnson Family Foundation, I want to shout out to him because they convened a number of us to think deeply about how these messages around suicide could actually have the reverse effect. What do I mean by that? Well, you see, as folks who work in suicide prevention will tell you, when you talk about suicide, and you talk about individuals who have suicide, and you memorialize those deaths, they can actually have the reverse effect. They can actually lead to copycat suicides, a phenomenon known as contagion. And in a social media context, the so-called Wild West, right? Everybody gets excited. I want to add my voice as another voice of justice and hope for young people. And I'm going to tell my story. I was so affected by this suicide or that suicide. It could actually have the effect, the opposite of what was intended. And so as a takeaway, as we begin to think about me, the head of an institution or an organization, an institution, you donors supporting institutions and supporting the kind of change that we've just applauded, we have to ask, does It Gets Better or other social media campaigns, do they actually achieve the intended result? A very important question. Certainly some videos do, others perhaps not as much. And in the context of social media campaigns, particularly those we all like to applaud, the kind that go viral, it's important to acknowledge, or at least from my perspective, that that very thing that makes it go viral, right? The passion that you see, the opportunity to get angry or excited, makes it very difficult to follow a best practice or the message recommendation that in this case is the least likely to trigger contagion or whatever the issue might be in a social media campaign. And that's a tension which institutions, organizations, donors to those organizations that we need to understand is part of a social media campaign and part of using social media campaigns to adopt strategies, institutional strategies for advancing social justice. In our case, our full equality. So I'm going to spend the rest of my time talking a little bit about how an institution, GLAAD, works in the social campaign space, what we did around It Gets Better, and what we've done more generally, to give you a sense, at least from our perspective, as a gay organization with a rapidly changing environment of social media, how we're working to try to stay impactful. So I want to back up now, after being a little bit of the skunk there at the garden party, and talk about some of the wonderful things about It Gets Better, and you saw a number of very powerful, effective videos. So how does an organization plug in using its mission to build on that success? You saw one of the names mentioned in Thomas's video was Joel Burns. So after Joel Burns did his video, and it started to go viral, it had about 200,000 views on YouTube, GLAAD reached out to Joel, and we said, look, a lot of people need to hear your story. But the people who really need to hear your story aren't the people going to YouTube. They're the people that don't even know what YouTube is. Let us work with you and help tell the rest of America your story, taking an It Gets Better video and making it, through traditional media platforms, a story that was heard by many more people. He said yes, and we media trained him. And then we flew him to New York City, and we got a bunch of media engagements. And after about 8 or 9 national news programs told his story, we think we reached probably about 20 million people beyond the people that saw his video on YouTube. And this, now it's time for the video. Is this what I'm supposed to do, Bobby?
Yes.
Cue to video. This is what came of that work.
I have never told this story to anyone before tonight. Not my family, not my husband, not anyone.
Joining me now, Fort Worth City Councilman Joel Burns.
And joining us on the early show exclusively this morning is Texas Councilman Joel Burns.
From Fort Worth, Texas, please welcome Joel Burns.
This was a momentous step you were about to take.
It was an effort to reach out, and at the time I was just thinking about kids in Fort Worth, but it gets better in ways you can never fathom as a 13 or 14-year-old when your experience has been what it has been up until that moment. It was a twofold message. It was for the kids who might be in a really dark place to remind them that indeed there is that opportunity, that things do get better, and it was for the adults who maybe even parents. There's so many happy memories that will be made. You just have to live long enough to get to them.
So that was an example of taking a traditional thing that GLAAD does, which is tell stories through the media, and applying it in the area of social media, in this case, a social media campaign. We might not have been comfortable with every video on It Gets Better, but taking one or several, as we did, and highlighting them allowed us to reach whole new audiences, what we do well at GLAAD, and in a way of partnering with, or at least partnering with the mission, the overall goals of It Gets Better. Now, if you back up to the treetops for a second from the specific campaign of It Gets Better, this is a challenge that many organizations, and because it's a challenge we face, that donors who are looking to support organizations really face. How is it that we harness the power of social media? How is it that we harness those campaigns, or maybe even incorporate the ability to do those campaigns within our own work every day? Because gosh, wouldn't it be great in our effort to advance our full equality if we could do an It Gets Better for every issue that we care about? Now, I don't have the answer to that. I can just tell you that this is a tension that each group faces, something we wrestle with. A tension because as much good as there is, there's also risk. When you open something up to user-generated content, you open it up, you give away control from your message to the people who you were inviting in, and that's risky. You also have to let those things sort of emerge somewhat organically. A challenge that we took up in the form of another campaign that some of you may have heard of that happened right around the time of It Gets Better. So our challenge, as we began at GLAAD to see a number of young people covered, their suicides or the larger issue of suicides and the separate issue of bullying, was how to amplify that voice, how to make a story around not just suicides, but the story around the need that we have as a society to improve the lives of young people. So what we did was focus on a youth-driven social media campaign. It started on Tumblr, migrated to Facebook, a campaign that young people said, hey, you know what? Let's recognize all of these young people who need a better life, and let's tell them, these kids, that we support them by wearing purple on October 20th. It began in late September, and by about mid-October, about 500,000 people, kids, had RSVP'd to an event wearing purple on October 20th. Our challenge at GLAAD was how can we internally, not somebody else's social media campaign, but create one of our own to take that phenomenon and push it out and make it more broadly applicable to the public. So our challenge was, how many people can we make go purple on October 20th? So what we did was we created first a Facebook tool. We allowed it to change your picture purple on Facebook. We did the same on Twitter, and we pushed it out to our networks, encouraging everybody, hey, wear purple on October 20th. Support young LGBT folks by telling them you support them. One way you can do that is by giving this really cool little tool on Facebook. Another way is to wear purple on October 20th. People shared that with their friends, and it took root. We then started pushing it out in traditional media, asking people to tweet to their followers. You can see the folks on Glee, Dr. Oz, telling their followers, hey, wear purple. I'm wearing purple to stop bullying, or I'm wearing purple to support LGBT youth. And then we had others take pictures of themselves wearing purple to tell their supporters, to tell their followers, to tell their friends to wear purple. And by pushing this out in traditional media, and by pushing it out on Facebook, it began to take root. Now, all of this happened in 72 hours. So unlike It Gets Better, which was a campaign of several months and is ongoing, we had 72 hours to make this happen, from October 17th to October 20th. So we reached out to our movement partners, and many of them joined us. HRC, the National Center for Lesbian Rights, GLSEN, Mass Equality, a lot of the state organizations joined us and pushed it out to their members. Through social media, traditional media, our movement partners, we were able to achieve this.
Spirit Day is to show lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender youth that there is a huge community that supports them. Purple represents spirit on the rainbow flag, a symbol of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender pride.
Some people are offering their support in other ways by turning to Facebook. Many people are joining the effort by changing their profile pictures to show something where they're wearing purple.
Hey everyone, it's October 20th, 2010, and happy Spirit Day, everyone. I hope you're all wearing purple. I'm wearing purple, obviously.
So our takeaway was this, that we can, in fact, not just ride the wave of a social media campaign that just emerged on the internet, but that we can, and really as a gay organization, must integrate social media campaigns into the way we do our work every day. It's simply too powerful of a tool not to. But it means a couple of other things too. It means recognizing that that campaign is organic. It lives really separately from the organization. And you'll notice that in most of this, you saw very little GLAAD branding associated with it. And that's how it has to be, because people see themselves as joining campaigns, not organizations. And it means letting go a little bit of your organizational brand to give success, to breathe life into a campaign like this. And that's connected to another very important point, that we have to really give up a little bit of control. Now, some of the control that I talked about, we have an obligation as an organization. For example, if we understand the impact of telling the wrong kind, talking about suicide in the wrong way, the possible impact negatively on LGBT youth, we don't want to do that. We have a responsibility for responsible messaging, but that we can still engage, understanding that we have to give control away to make a social media campaign that invites users in their voices in. At the same time, we can do that and still create a successful campaign. This is a sort of a snapshot in the middle. This is something that you will see all organizations, all of our LGBT organizations struggle with. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle because it means doing things differently than we've always done them. And it means giving up control. It means branding things not our own. It means the sorts of strategies which go against a lot of the ways we've always done it. But social media is too important, and the benefits, as you've seen with It Gets Better, with Spirit Day, are just too powerful for us not to take this up. That is our charge, and I think that's maybe a good place for me to end my remarks.
When we're working with, when all of us are working with organizations, sort of whether they're small, nimble startups or lumbering corporate brands, where social fits in your campaign equation, where does it fit organizationally, where does it fit from a cadence perspective, can be really terrifying or can be exciting. I think I fall somewhere in the middle of that. And what we learned and what we sort of talk about most is you can control it in certain ways, but you can't restrict it. The control you have is the opportunity to engage your constituents, to build relationships, sort of its CRM strategy, your customer relationship management, to reward and spotlight the best, the highlights, the ones that are on message. It was a very sobering moment when Bobby introduced me to the folks at the Johnson Family Foundation, and we dug into some of the real research around the messaging. And at the same time, we had in my DC office 15 volunteers who were going through tagging things from YouTube to bring them into the site that we had created so they can live in both platforms. We did take to heart you know, a lot of that guidance and the things that were spotlighted within the It Gets Better site, the recognition that Dan Savage gave when he was doing media, and the things we pointed the community towards were those that were on message, though some on YouTube were dramatically off message. There was even some hateful things that were on YouTube tagged to we got some removed, others you just can't control. But it's that constant reminder to the community that you're recognizing the positive traction. I mean, I use the example of the Obama campaign where there were close to 80,000 blogs within the 13 million constituencies, the sort of blogging technology that allowed. A lot of them were not all that fond of different moves of the campaign. And you could find those people that were off message at any time if you really dug in. But when you have your sort of brand spotlight, your organizational spotlight, pointed to those that are productively furthering your message, that's really, like Joel Burns, exactly, that's really the only control we have. So the goal for all of us needs to be building up relationships with those that support and are on message, training them, walking them up the curve of engagement. I say the ladder of engagement, you have the curve of engagement, but it is that, so that you're actually deputizing people to manage your brand out there for you. It's really a long process for many organizations, but it's the only way that we're going to be able to grapple with the proper positioning and power of social within the realities of our organizations, brands, and et cetera.
So stepping back from the campaign to the movement, I think there's actually another very, very important question around the impact of these campaigns, in particular of people who've been involved in it. And that's really the challenge of how we engage that person who submitted that video for that campaign into a more sustained and connected relationship to the movement as a whole. We want them back. We want them for ENDA. We want them for whatever the next issue is that we need them engaged on. And how can we, as we design campaigns, more successfully engage them for the long term is something that is also, I think, a very important question that we have yet to answer. But the way in which we capture names and push out new campaigns to them which engage them, particularly young people, but not just young people, is a question. We want to get all those 13,000 videos, folks doing videos, and everybody else more engaged in our work for equality.
And oftentimes it's the rush to call, just because someone took a campaign action doesn't suddenly make them a member of your organization. Exactly. So how do you really define that association, and how do you walk them closer towards being a long-standing member without sort of jumping the gun and talking to them in ways that they may not be ready to be spoken to?